Hello, welcome back to All For United WFC. It is the big one. I put it on the tweet earlier because it feels like we're at that point of the season already. We were just chatting a bit backstage there. That, is it a bit too early for kind of must-wins and all these kind of things? But a game of this magnitude is always one to look forward to. And it's LSV as well for those of you who are travelling to the game. I'm sure that's something that people have been pushing for, certainly from a United point of view, to not have so many games at Old Trafford. That's a whole other conversation. As you can see, I've got Jamie with me for people who watch this channel. You'll have only seen her once, which we did the Bizet show, the player profile back in, Christ, when was that? September? I want to say it was. August, September. Feels a while ago. So much has happened in that time. Lost track of where things were. But Jamie, thanks for joining us. How are you doing over there?
Connor, I'm brilliant. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to work through this. Less excited about the game, but we'll talk about that.
No, I remember actually the last time you were, well, the show that we did, you were actually in Australia at the time. So I'm glad you're back on like UK time zone.
Me too. It's no longer 1 a.m. This is good.
It's easy to record this way. We're all at the same time. But there we are. So yes, obviously get all your comments in as usual. We'll go through all of them. I'm sure people have got a lot to say as we dive into this one. There's certainly a lot of chat. We put one tweet out earlier, and oh my life, and it wasn't even about the game really. So we've had a lot of discussions there. But firstly, Jamie, I'll just come to you and ask from an Arsenal point of view, in terms of just how the season has gone so far, from how you've viewed it. Because obviously it's been mixed. Obviously, we'll talk about the managers a little bit separately, but results as a whole, I can probably say it's been underwhelming. Is probably a fair way of putting it. But how have you viewed Arsenal so far in this kind of first 7 or 8 games for you?
Honestly, it has been a turbulent ride so far for Arsenal. I think any Arsenal fan that knows that is well aware of that. Coming into the competitive Champions League fixtures, obviously there was some good results against Rangers and Rosenborg, and then it kind of all fell apart and went downhill from there. I thought Arsenal started really well at the Emirates against Manchester City, probably the better of two teams, and then since then, wow, has it fallen off. Results have been very underwhelming, Connor, to say the least, and I think the worst part of it from an Arsenal point of view isn't just the results, but also the performances and maybe the culture aspect, and you guys can probably empathise from that a little bit. Maybe looking back at last season, it feels as if we're going through a similar thing. So, yeah, underwhelming, that's for sure.
No, it's interesting because I think I always say this whenever Arsenal and United meet. I always say the fan bases and the way the teams are very similar. Obviously, that's now slightly different because Jonas, as we'll come to in a second, has already left. But before that, it was a very similar situation where the fan base was sceptical over the manager. The kind of playing styles were very similar. There was a lot of similarities between the two, and the fan base, I think, are actually very similar. I know that there's a lot of, I guess, back and forth, certainly online, but I do feel like the fan base are very similar. That's probably why they clash more than most fan bases, to be honest.
Yeah.
Ella, that is quite something. We were literally just discussing this before we went live, because I've just had it on my phone. I turned it off, so no distraction. So I'll get back to that after this one. Let's talk quickly on the managers then. Obviously, I'll come back to Mark Skinner in a second. So, as we tweeted earlier, it's his 100th game for Manchester United this weekend. But from an Arsenal point of view, what have you made of that whole situation? It feels like a couple of weeks ago now that obviously that happened. Rene's had a couple of games now. What do you think is going to happen now? I think I saw in the press conference earlier spoken about that she's going to be charged for at least another, is it 5 games or something like that, until the next internationals. What are your kind of thoughts all around the manager situation at Arsenal right now?
Yeah, the manager situation at Arsenal right now, there is so much to unpack there, because I think it was very clear at the end of last season that Jonas Adebar was given a prompt by the club to say, hey, you need to be achieving more than you did last season. I think he was well aware of that. And then Arsenal came out of the gates very weak this season. And from an Arsenal point of view, I think it doesn't look good on the club. And I'll touch a little bit on Rene Slegers, but I think Jonas Adebar making that decision to resign and then Arsenal not being able to find a head coach and Rene Slegers coming in and saying, look, I'm in charge for the next 5 games is a little bit indicative of the fact that the club would, I think, dragging their feet a little bit in terms of making those hard decisions with Jonas Adebar, and would he have left as imminently as he did if it was down to the club and not to him resigning. So, look, I think Rene Slegers, we can't expect a lot from her given the fact she's an assistant that's coached under Jonas. She's not going to bring an immediately new brand of football to the club, and I don't think fans should have that expectation on her because she's an assistant coach that has just taken post under the manager that she's worked under. So, look, I really respect her, and I think I'm comfortable with her for the next 5 games, and I like her philosophy, but I don't know if it's a very positive sign for the direction that the club was intending to head on.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think what you just said there about Arsenal's, I guess, struggles or still looking around for a new manager, I genuinely believe this is one of the reasons for United maybe not making a change in the summer. I know there was a lot of, just from a United point of view, scepticism again about Mark Skinner, and obviously he only got the year with an option of a further year. But I think this is one of the reasons that there's not all too many managers out there right now. Certainly not this early in the season. It's going to move. You've got to wait probably till January or next summer to maybe get the manager that you want. So I think that's maybe why United are hanging on, and obviously see how the season goes. If we're going to win the league, I can see him getting a new contract anyway. But from an Arsenal point of view, I guess the only other question I've got on the manager front, do you think it was the right time? Because it does feel early in the season. I can't remember how many games it was into the league. 4 league games, I think it was at the time. Is that too early? Do you think it was the right time? What's your kind of thoughts on that and kind of how it all played out?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point because, in football, there's never a right time for a manager to leave. Like, it clearly means that there's something going on in the club. So in terms of that, it's never a good sign. However, I think that it needed to be done when it was done. And if it had been left a little bit later, it would have been quite worrying because you could tell, even in that Chelsea game at the Emirates, I thought Arsenal actually played better than Chelsea, but it was the motivation and the culture you could see in the players was absolutely gone. And you can't manage culture once it's gone. I thoroughly believe that if you've lost a playing group, you've lost the playing group. And I think that's what it was, rather than like maybe his tactics and stuff. Because I think Jonas Eidevall is a very good tactician. He's not a very good big game manager. He's not very good at like building the dressing room. So once that's gone, I think it's really hard to build back. So it was probably the right time for Arsenal. However, like you said, Connor, there is not many head coach options available right now. And there's been shouts for a lot of managers that I don't think of even possibly going to think about taking the Arsenal job. There's been shouts for Casey Stoney. I know a lot of people have their reservations about that, and a lot of people think it's a positive thing. But yeah, look, I think it needed to happen when it did because the dressing room felt lost. The players didn't feel motivated. So I'm glad it didn't drag on, but I am a bit worried about this middle ground period that we're in.
Yeah, I just find it interesting because, especially in women's football at the moment, you don't necessarily see this too often. I know there was a question in the chat just a second ago, I think Truth just said about did he resign or was he sacked? I think the official word was that he resigned, and I do believe that. I think he probably walked into there, but I think he probably knew that he wasn't far away from being sacked anyways. I think it was probably more of a case of walking before being pushed, so to speak. Whether results may have changed, obviously we don't know that now, but yeah, it's an interesting one. I think results definitely, we're going to come to this game in just a second, but should Arsenal lose on Sundays, we were just saying backstage that that essentially rules Arsenal out the title race, and top 3 is even then looking a bit sketchy, and that's only 5-6 games into a season, which is mental considering all the football that's left to play. And I think just someone's talking about a new manager and so on, and I don't necessarily believe in new manager bounces. This is going to sound really weird and so on, but I think there's an element to it. Players do get a bit of confidence, but I don't think it's necessarily and you could argue with the Man United men's side. Obviously, Ten Hag went, United then scored 5 goals, which is something we've struggled with all season. But I just think it's I think too much is put on that. Put it that way, and I don't think Rene can do too much in such a short period of time. Albeit now has got another 5 games, but ahead of this one, I don't think there's too much you can do in that one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think the new manager bounce is something. There's so much pressure put on it. It's like, oh, your manager's sacked. Can't wait to win the next weekend. Let's stop that. I think what's actually positive for Arsenal coming out of all of this is the international break bounce. And I think that's going to benefit Arsenal a lot more than it did United, because United were maybe finding some form and finding their feet, whereas Arsenal needed a breakaway from the playing field, I think. They needed to just go away, do their thing for the national team and come back and collate. And I think that will be more helpful than the actual new manager, because, Connor, I agree. Let's stop with that new manager bounce. I'm over it.
No, I agree. I actually said that the international break probably came at the wrong time for us. And a few of our players did well on international break. I don't, and we'll talk about Toon separately in a second. But Clinton obviously did well, and Letitia and so on, and Janssen didn't really get tested. Maybe in the second game, but the first game didn't really get tested. And a couple of odd minutes, here and there as well. And Eve Mannion scoring her first international goal for Ireland as well, which was quite something. Before we get on to a kind of, like I said, I want to mention Toon as a separate talk box. I know there's a lot of conversation around her and so on. But just my last word on the manager. I tweeted this earlier. that is Mark Skinner's 100th game on Sunday. I just want to ask you from an outsider's point of view, looking at United in terms of what you think on all that kind of conversation, because I know as soon as we put that on Twitter, the reaction that we're going to get to a tweet like that, and it was exactly as I thought it was going to be when I put that out on Twitter earlier. What do you make of all that? Because obviously United haven't lost a game yet this season, but there is still scepticism around him, and I think some is very justified. I've written about it and spoke about it on here. But we're 100 games in now. What will be 100 games in come Sunday? What do you make around all that kind of conversation at the moment, looking at it from the outside?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I obviously don't have any emotional attachment to the situation. But in terms of United this season, they've obviously gotten the results against maybe bottom of the league teams that maybe last season, I think they were even struggling to get those results against bottom of the league teams. So that is a very big positive that I think people are kind of chalking up to. Oh, they haven't played anyone big yet. And then, but you're scraping along you're scraping those results. You look at Arsenal playing against Everton, they couldn't scrape that result. United didn't put it in a very inspirational display against Everton, but they scraped the result. That's what leagues come down to. We've seen it with City, we've seen it with Chelsea. It's about churning out results. I think that's positive in terms of this season. I thought that the Brighton game, the second half, United really struggled, and that came down to the manager. In terms of Mark Skinner's 100th game, I think he's had a lot of talent over his tenure at Manchester United. And it's very easy for me to sit and say, oh, with the players you have, you probably should have been achieving more. But you look at teams like Chelsea and City and Arsenal over those same periods, and it's really hard to challenge with sides of that high caliber talent in their squad. So you're always going to be in and around it. I think for me, the biggest thing with Mark Skinner last season is exactly what Arsenal are going through, right now, is it was a culture thing. It felt like he lost the dressing room, and it's hard to win that back. This season, I feel like there's been a real shift in that. I think United look like they want to be playing together. So whether that comes down to the manager and maybe a summer off, it's a different story, because 2 seasons ago, I was terrified of United. I was dreading every time Arsenal had to play, and for good respect, because we lost both games, but I was absolutely terrified of United. I thought they were a really strong side. So I'm not going to sit here and say, get him out. I don't think he's the most inspirational manager in the league. I think he struggles a lot. However, I don't know if right now he is an issue. I think
that's a very fair way of putting it. I think that's why I always say on here, we'll just wait and see where we are. Come January, February, March. Let's see where we are in the table first. Let's play these games against Arsenal. Then we've got Chelsea this month as well, and then City at the end of January. We won all 3 of them. I think that conversation changes very slightly, but I think we lose all of them, then the conversation changes, but in that direction. So that's why I always put such big emphasis on these games, because that season when we finished second, these were the games we were winning. As you mentioned, the double over Arsenal that season, beat City at home, probably should have won away and challenged Chelsea as well. Whereas last season, we lost all of these by a 3-1 margin, as people like to point out a lot. Nearly all of them were 3-1s. So let's not do that again. In terms of the game itself, then, what are you kind of looking at, I guess, from an Arsenal point of view, first off, in terms of key players? Who should United be watching out for? We've seen a couple of players stand out a little bit for Arsenal amongst some of the poorer results, but who in there is the standout that you would like to highlight in terms of someone United should be looking out for on Sunday?
Yeah, I think the biggest threat probably right now for Arsenal, and I'm not even saying this from an Australian bias, but is probably Caitlin Ford. And I think that's a bit of a mix of the form she's found herself in. She's been in really, really good form. It's nice to see her back, because I thought she had a very quiet season last year. But it's also a little bit to do with who United might be having matched up against her. We'll speak a little bit more about it, Connor, but in terms of maybe if Celine Bizet starts in right back, I think Caitlin Ford could cause some real issues on the left wing. That's who I'd probably say is the biggest threat right now. Emily Fox is also a strong player. I think she's been our most consistent player all season. I think Frida Marnham's also been good, but I think United will win the midfield battle pretty comfortably in my eyes. So I don't know if that threat will need to be nullified and paid extra attention to as much as maybe the width, especially with if Celine does start in the right back position, which we'll talk about.
Well, you've led me on nicely. Let's briefly touch on that, because there's a question that Beth put in about, obviously we did the player profile, as we said at the start, on Celine Bizet. We were kind of chatting backstage. If I'm being totally honest, at the moment, if you're asking me today, I would expect Celine to be starting right back, purely because Jade is only just coming back from injury. We know how kind of Jay's injury record and her history with that, I don't see her starting a game of this magnitude. First off, we've got a busy month. We've got 5 games this month as it is. So I would imagine Mark keeps it the same, unless it's Aoife Mannion at right back, which I would prefer, by the way, as a more defensively minded right back. But what have you made of that? Because you highlighted Celine's kind of defensive abilities on the show that we did about the player profile. We've seen her, twice at right back, one against Spurs and one against Brighton. She got assists in both games, so from an attacking point of view, it clearly works. But defending-wise, in a game like this, as you've just mentioned, maybe up against Ford as well, do you think that is a bit of a worry from United if it is Bizet at right back?
Yeah, look, I think it is a bit of a worry. To be honest, I really, really love Celine Bizet. She's one of my favourite players. If I haven't said that enough, she's one of my favourite players to watch in the league. I think she's brilliant and really exciting. But and a right back, I asked Mark Skinner about this after the Brighton game, and I also asked him before the Brighton game about Celine in the defence and whether that was like a clear intent when signing her. And he said, yes, that was a discussion that we had with her. And she said, like, Mark, listen, I love to defend and I want to do that as much as I possibly can. In my eyes, I thought against Spurs, she was brilliant. I thought she was absolutely outstanding. Attacking wise, she was brilliant. However, I don't think Spurs really caused her any issues defensively. Brighton, the first half, I thought United was superb at pressing and making sure that Brighton couldn't build up play. But then as soon as Dario Vidicic made some changes and brought on Michelle Aguimang, Celine struggled. She struggled. She was like really turned inside out. So I think when it comes to maybe a more powerful and direct winger, the same profile of Caitlin Ford, she's going to struggle a bit. And I don't think she's an out-and-out right back. She's not a wing back. And I like her defensive abilities, but I like her defensive abilities from the forward pocket. I like that she can track back, that she can recover. I don't think she's a right back. And like you said, Con, I agree. I think she'll probably start this weekend, and that is a bit of a cause for concern. But listen, if the rest of your defense is organised, it can be worked through. And that's a lot to say about how maybe unthreatening the rest of Arsenal's front line is as well. Because if they can overload the left side and stop Caitlin Ford, then Sling gets help, then maybe it'll be all right.
I think that's the key thing, because this new system of United is heavily reliant on the press working, and when it doesn't, as we saw in the second half against Brighton, whoever's the advanced fullback, so it was Leah Galton in the first few games, and it was Bizet against Spurs and Brighton, that side can get overloaded. And for people who haven't seen my article, the reason I wrote about this in particular is because she's kind of caught in between. Does she press the midfielder or does she follow the runner? And that happened 3 or 4 times against Brighton. And if that happens against Arsenal, that would worry me, because she's not a natural defender. She's very good at defending, but she's used to defending when there's another player behind her as well, not being the one that is the furthest back. So again, and it can work if Maya, in this case, shifts across, but then you're dragging the whole team across. So again, like I said, it can work to a point, but you need that front four. That has to work, because as soon as that ball goes over the top, she's caught in kind of in no man's land, really. I think that's where the issues kind of come about. So that would worry me a little bit. As I said, I don't know that's fact, by the way, that she's starting right back. I'm just assuming, because I just don't think Jade is maybe fit enough to play a full game. And if she's going to play, I would imagine it's the last 25 minutes of a game. And we just don't seem to see Aoife Mannion at the moment. So I don't quite know what she needs to do to get a start at right back. So I don't know. In that case, it would worry me a little bit. And obviously, I want to come back to the midfield from a United point of view in a separate question. And I agree, TJ, on this, by the way. I think it can work against a team that is not going to have much more of the ball, or maybe that know-how of that kind of direct approach that we saw against Brighton. It can work. Like Spurs were very much... Spurs are very good at keeping hold of the ball and playing it fast on the ground, which kind of helped United in that game. Whereas when you've got a team that is happy to go direct, in terms of going into the channels, that's where it can become a problem. There was a question for you, actually, just a second ago, from Adam, talking about Rosa Kafardi, another player that maybe hasn't seen the minutes that we maybe thought. Do you see her starting against United? And if so, where, in terms of that kind of front four?
I love Rosa Kafardi, guys. I love Rosa Kafardi. I do not think she's going to start against United, though. No, I can't lie. I don't see that happening. I think Renee hasn't had enough time to sort out the kind of intricacies of the Arsenal squad right now. Obviously, they've just all gone away. Majority of the squad have gone away to the international break. So I think we'll see a pretty reserved and safe lineup. We often like to play Kim Little and Leah Volti in a double pivot against United. and really lock down the midfield. So I expect we'll see that if they're both fit to play. But as much as I would love to say put on Rosa Kafaji, she's a game changer. She's one of those footballers that will come on and she will change games. She'll take that responsibility on herself and not be afraid to make mistakes. And I don't think Arsenal have many players, if any players, with that confidence right now. But no, I don't think she'll start, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the one player I look at as a bit of a worry off the bench, that's for sure. When you look at from that, but I do agree. I can't see her starting. From a United point of view, again, is Leah Galton going to be fit for Sunday? I would highly doubt it, if I'm being totally honest. I don't see her back for the next couple, to be honest. Oh, no, she might be back. Who have we got after Arsenal? I don't even know our fixtures. Who's at Villa? She might be back for that. Might be touching it. I'd be amazed if she's there on Sunday, if I'm being totally honest. But there we go. I agree with that as well. And we were kind of talking a little bit about international break and so on. But when you're looking at it from that point of view, in terms of Maya did play well at right back. And she was also left back as well at one point, which was a bit like, really? Don't know what's going on there, playing her anywhere but the position that she plays for club. But I do think that is an option. I've been saying that all season that I want to see Janssen at centre back. And if he doesn't want to drop Millie, then put Maya at right back and leave Celine on the right in terms of right wing. And put Maya at right back and you put Dom and Millie in the middle. I wouldn't be against that at all. But I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Mark has spoken about Dom in numerous interviews saying about how he sees her as a midfielder, so I just don't see that changing. Certainly not in a game of this magnitude anyway. Before we come back to Arsenal, I want to ask you again from maybe an outsider's point of view in terms of the United midfield, because again, people, when we tweet, it wasn't even Twitter, it was Instagram actually, when we put the Instagram post out, people just assume that I put Tooney and Russo on the thumbnail together just because it's those two. Trust me, there was a reason behind picking those two. And one of the reasons is the Ella Toon conversation, because again, I think she didn't have an amazing international break. There's obviously off the field things at the moment as well, which I'm sure is playing on the mind as well. My questions are obviously from last season as well, because I said this all the way through last season about her position and where do you kind of get her into the game. Now Grace Clinton's come in, she scored 3 and 4. If you're not in the league, she's the first United player to do that. What would you be looking at, or what would you, I guess, if you were flipping your allegiances to a United side, what would you be wanting to see? Because there's a lot of shouts for Simia Wujo, for example. There's a lot of shouts for Hayley Lads, who, I mean, for whatever reason, just can't even get pity minutes at the moment for United. She can't even get on the pitch for the last minute of a game. And obviously you got Janssen as well, Lisa Nars, and Mia Zhao is another player that can't seem to get into the team either. What would you be doing? I mean, this is kind of a redundant conversation because it will be Ella Toon starting, regardless of what's going on here. But what would you be looking to do with that United midfield? Because if it is Bizet at right back, it's going to be Clinton on the wing again. I would have thought on the right wing.
I really like this conversation because I think there's so much to be said about Ella Toon, because no matter her form, she does seem invincible. Like, even on the weekends where I'm like I have to watch United and the rest of the WSL games on replay, I'm like, oh, has Tooney really started again? Because it feels like even when she's out of form, she's got that position locked down, which is interesting because I don't know if he operates that way so consistently other than maybe his centre back. So I think with Ella Toon right now, she's not as dynamic as she can be. I'm not going to say once was, because she hasn't even hit her prime yet. She's still young, but I don't think she's as dynamic and she's not as creative. And whether that is the fact that this player has played football since the Olympics, not the Olympics that just happened, the Olympics before then, consistently for 4 years. I really, really think when it comes to a player like Ella Toon, like, yes, she's had this summer, but obviously, like, she has not had a very nice summer, and like, all my love to her and her family, but she needs a break. She needs a rejig. And I really think that is how she's going to find form. I'm not saying she's playing badly every week. I'm just saying it feels as if she's kind of lost her role because she hasn't really been given the kind of question, the conundrum of, okay, Ella, we need you to find your role in this team again, because it feels like she's being rewarded regardless of her form. If I was a United fan, I would not be wanting to see Ella start against Arsenal. I wouldn't want to be seeing her start too consistently either until she kind of finds that form, because we know how good Ella Toon can be when she's good. Like, bloody hell, she can be good. Right now, I think Lisa Nelson is an underrated player. I look at United and I think she's a very underrated footballer. she is a starting midfielder for me. Grace Clinton does her best work in the midfield. It was interesting because Spurs, obviously, she had a breakout season last season, but she played on the left wing. But I think she does her best work centrally. She's an exceptional talent. You just cannot look past a player like that. She's one of a kind. And then I really think Miyazawa, every time she comes on, it feels like she's playing in a more wide role for United. And we've seen what she can do for Japan in the 10. So I just think that, like, it's about rotation for United. It's about finding these players that are going to work. Because if you're going to be a team that can really challenge across all competitions and bring different game plans to high level oppositions, you need to have options. Doesn't feel like he has options. He has them, but he won't use them. And then you can't bring them out against big teams when you haven't used them before. So as an outsider, I'd like to see Miyazawa get some more goals, maybe in a central midfield role. I think Hayley Ladd for a more defensive role should be deployed against teams when necessary. But Lisa Nelson and Grace Clinton, in my eyes, are your starting midfielders. And then you pick the midfielder that maybe best suits the opposition or is in the best form.
No, I agree with that. I was just double checking as well. So I can't find it on this sheet we get. But there it is. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure she is. Yeah, Ella Toon has actually got the most goals against Arsenal for United. Rachel Williams is actually the top scorer overall, actually, against Arsenal with 4 in 17.
Don't play her.
However, all 4 of those goals for Rachel Williams were not in a United shirt. So Ella Toon's currently 2 in 9 against Arsenal, and then we've got Millie Turner, Galton, and Mallard all on 1 against us. So we've not actually got that many scorers in the team against Arsenal. Just for those of you interested from an Arsenal point of view, it's Black Stenius who is the highest scorer against United with 2 in 5 against United. But no, I tend to agree, and I think there's a lot of conversation around this, and I think I've always said I would like to see Janssen push back to centre back, so that takes Janssen out of the midfield, and my midfield at the moment would be Ladd or Simi, one of the two. Clinton's just got to be in there. You cannot take her out right now with the form she's on. And then the other spot is Miyazawa or Narsent or somebody like that for the moment. Now, don't get me wrong. There's moments in games where Toon's maybe not on it, but she can do what she did in the cup final, for example, where she can just pull something out. So I get the reasons for keeping her in there because she is capable of not doing anything for 88 minutes. But then that one moment where she can do something. So I get it. I get why she is there and in the team. But I just feel like at the moment it's so unbalanced. If there's one thing I don't like about our team at the moment in terms of the way we're setting up, it's that unbalanced midfield. I just don't think it's quite working with the players. And I feel like we're trying to just put everyone in because they're all great players in their own right. But you can't always do that. Sometimes you got to think of what's best for the overall structure of the team. And maybe that means upsetting a few players and leaving a few players on the bench. But people always say you're not just leaving them on the bench and that's it. They're never going to play. They can still get minutes. You know, you can still get 30 minutes in a game and you play well, you earn your starting spot again. So, you know, it's not all bad just by taking them out of the team at the 11, for example. And I agree. I think it would do the world of good. So, I mean, I agree to a point, but I think that's a little bit too attacking for my liking. I don't think Nelson could be the sit-in 6. Maybe against other teams, and maybe certainly not against Arsenal. I wouldn't want to see that. I think that's maybe a bit too attacking for my liking. I would like a Ladd or a Simi or somebody else in there just to provide that, I guess, cover. In the midfield as well. While we were just speaking about that, I just want to quickly ask you on Grace Clinton, actually, because she did get a goal in the international break as well. And just, again, what you've made of her, because, I mean, United fans, I guess, knew the player that we were getting back from Spurs, you know, from her form last season. There's obviously a lot of talk around her contract and everything else today. I think Mark spoke about that in his press conference earlier as well today. What have you made of her, and how good do you think she can get for the rest of this season? She's only 1 goal off her goal tally for Spurs for the whole season last season. Yeah, she's only 1 goal away from that already, 4 games in. How good can she get, you know, in terms of her abilities, but also how do you think United get even more out of her in this team that Mark is trying to build this season?
Grace Clinton is a Oh my, like the words, like I think she is genuinely an exceptional footballer. She's only 21. And the thing that really, really like draws me to watching Grace Clinton, and I covered Spurs a lot last season and saw it a lot in her, she has this like maturity in the way she plays football that you don't see in players her age. She kind of commands the area and she makes herself bigger than she actually is. And that's not something you can teach. That's something that a player just has ingrained in them. And I think she's so spatially aware of the game. Her football IQ is incredible. She knows where everyone is at every point. So I think for a player like her, I saw her leaving Spurs and there's always so much talk about, oh, she's hating it at United. She's going to hate it at United. And look, like you can kind of give into those conversations sometimes, but I think the player we've seen in these first 4 league games for United, is twice as good as what we saw for Spurs last season. She's playing with more maturity. I think she is so confident in the way that she's not afraid to make mistakes. Sometimes that is to her own detriment. But in terms of getting the most out of Grace, I think we saw it. The Brighton game is a perfect example of that. The first half, I thought she was best player on the field by far. I was at the Amex that day and I was watching her and I was like, this girl commands the area like no one else on the field. Second half, I thought she went missing. And that is something that purely comes with maturity and experience. This is a 21-year-old footballer. She is not going to be able to be holding those levels for 90 minutes. And I think that links a lot into the England conversation. And I think there's a lot of chatter and noise about the England's lineups and why she didn't play against Germany. And Mark Skinner made a really good point this morning and said, this is a young talent. Like we need to make sure she's enjoying her football and protecting this talent, and then she will flourish. And I think it's just about kind of just nurturing her and watching her grow, because the only thing that's really missing from her game that won't grow in terms of tactics and skill is the maturity. And it's the ability to be able to do that for 90 minutes. And that just comes with time. She's 21. She's not playing like a 21-year-old. She's absolutely exceptional footballer. So I think about with Grace, it's the mental aspect more than the tactics or the skills that she needs to improve on.
No, I 100% agree there. And I think that's the thing. Just keep her enjoying the game. You know, Mark spoke about this. He speaks really well about her, actually. I know there's a lot of criticism that gets put Mark's way in terms of the way he speaks about players certain times. And we've said it on this channel in terms of some of the things he said about players. But I think what he said about Grace, and to be fair, what Grace has then returned in the Lionesses camp about him, I do think that he spoke really well about her. And I think he's right. He's got to just keep her enjoying the game, because at the moment it's paying off. And you're seeing what kind of player she is at the moment. Just unbelievable. I mean, I'm watching it going on. I just can't believe, as you said, the maturity on the ball, but just her football intelligence as well, where to be on and off the ball is just unbelievable. So fingers crossed we get some kind of contract signed with her, because I know there's going to be a lot of concern potentially about that as well as the year goes on. And so I just want to quickly bring this up, because I'm assuming this is in reference to a comment that I deleted, because one did come through. For those of you who didn't see, I'm not going to read it out because, well, it's deleted now anyway, so I can't even find it, even if I wanted to. But I'm assuming that's what you're referring to. It's the only thing I can think of. But yes, that person has been blocked and removed from the channel. It's been a while since we've had a comment like that. So there we go. Channel's growing every day. It was. Yeah. I was very quick to remove and ban that person. So maybe they'll make an alt account and come back. Who knows? We've had that before. There we go. Right. There's a couple of questions in the chat I want to get to, but I want to come to a question. I usually do this halfway through the show. It's a little bit past halfway, but it's a question we've not done for a while in terms of these big, I guess, preview shows. But Jim, I'm going to ask you the question in terms of, and everyone in the chat as well can answer this from an Arsenal/United point of view as well. If you could swap one player from the Arsenal team, from the United team into Arsenal, and you can do it both ways if you want, but from United to Arsenal, but the caveat is they have to start. So whoever you're swapping from United into Arsenal, they have to then remove that player from the Arsenal 11 and start in that position. Who would you be taking from United and swapping into that Arsenal team right now?
Grace Clinton goes straight into the midfield corner. No doubt about it. Arsenal need a confident player on the ball right now that's just going to make something happen. The other one I would say, and this is going to kill me to say, it's actually going to kill me to say, but if we're talking purely right now based on form, I would take in Elizabeth Turlin and start her over Alessia Russo or Stina Blackstenius. That's purely based on form. And I'm so sorry to any Arsenal fans that want me to fight the Russo battle, because I can't do it right now, guys. I can't do it. So I'm going to say Clinton and Turland probably. Connor, your turn.
I've had a whole 35 minutes to think about this. I've still not, because there is an obvious one, but because I'm not swapping out Turland, there's a couple of players where I'm like, they're staying in regardless. Then I'm kind of thinking midfield. We don't need another midfielder, but there is one I'm thinking of. And then Emily Fox is a player I absolutely love watching as well. But then I love Jade Moore, so I'm not swapping her out. If it was Emily Fox over Celine, then maybe I'd consider that, but not over Jade. I'm not having that. So the only other player, and this seemed a surprise, really, actually, I would, because she's a little bit not on the older side, but I guess towards the end of her career rather than the beginning of it, is somebody like Leah Volty, maybe. Into the United midfield as the sitting one, because I love Janssen and I think Janssen is an unbelievable player, but I just don't like her in that 6. I'd rather she shifts back to centre back. So in my head, I'd be going Volty and then dropping Janssen back into the centre back spot because I can't think of anyone else.
I think that's
right wing. I mean, you're looking at Mead, Russo. I wouldn't swap any of them not at the moment, anyway. Because there's a lot of. Over who though? Truth. If you're swapping Kafaji, and that over who are you swapping out for that? Because like Vic saying Steen, there's a couple of Steiner shouts, but over Turland.
Yeah,
no,
wow.
I'm not having that.
That is something else.
Yeah, I don't know if I can get on board with that. I would take Steiner for the squad, but in this little hypothetical game that we've created where they have to start, no chance of my swapping Steiner over Turland. Okay. Kafaji over Galton on the left,
That's
I can see that. Rachel Williams isn't the starter though, so you can't necessarily be doing that. I mean, again, another fair shot. I mean, Williamson's having a rough time at the moment. In her current form, you're shaking your head at that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be making that switch. But I love Leah, but not right now. Not right now. That's no dig at her personally. Just right now. Millie Turner's in good form.
Yeah, she's not been on it at the moment. I mean, it's a fact on a serious question actually in terms of this one. Do you think it is down to that? Because Mead again, they say that though. Mead came back and was scoring she scored quite a lot of goals when she came back.
Yeah, Mead was in top form when she came back. She made that return against Aston Villa at the Emirates and then set up Alessia Russo for the game-winning goal. And since then, she was really good. And this season, she just hasn't found her feet. And I think there's so much to do with the fact that, like, the rotation's not there for Beth Mead. Like, we obviously sold Chloe Lacasse over the summer, didn't bring in a winger in terms of replacing her. So we're thin on the ground in terms of, okay, like, work for your spot back and we'll see the best out of you. And Leah Williamson, I don't have any issues with right now. I think she's struggling and we've seen that happen, but she's hardly played in the WSL. Arsenal have a real issue with continuity with the centre backs and it's very important, I think, with centre backs to have continuity with who they're playing alongside of. So I'm not worried about Leah. She had some shocking moments for England, but again, she hasn't played constant football and it's friendly fixtures. So I'm not out here calling for Leah Williamson's head because I think she's an exceptional footballer. So I'm not too worried.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way of looking at it. I mean, just very quickly, as a Scotland supporting man as I am, yes, 100% I would. Any chance to get any more Scots into the United team, I'm all for. However, would she necessarily... Again, I'm thinking because, again, latter age in her career. Right now, if you asked me to do a swap there, I wouldn't be doing it. But, I mean, I would in terms of just getting more Scots into the team. I'm all for that. We lost Thomas a few years ago. So we need some... And Hansen, actually, for that matter. So we need some more Scots in the team. So I'm all for that. But, yeah, as I said, 34... no, not at the moment. We've just bought Simia Wujo, who's 20. Like, that's the future you'd be looking towards. But, yeah, no, not for me. People are taking this game quite seriously.
It's fun.
Kevin's just gone for a Steiner and Turland duo.
Oh, yeah, I don't mind that actually.
Yeah, I wouldn't be against that either.
Fun.
There's obviously a lot of chat about Williamson now.
Queen Liz is brilliant, by the way. I love that. I'm going to start calling her that.
So Barry started that over the summer, and it's kind of just, I thought there's no way that's going to catch on, and everyone now just refers her as that. So if she's ever watching this, she's going to have no idea what this.
That is brilliant. It's brilliant.
So, yeah, Barry started something there. Little's just class anyway. She's just unbelievable football. I'd love her to still be playing for Scotland. Obviously, to be fair, Scotland's midfield is good enough anyway at the moment. But yeah, it's she's just a class footballer. Obviously, don't want.
Don't
Not allowed to blink now.
be saying that. No, the accusations need to go away immediately. I was watching them for Tottenham last year, guys, so I'm over it. No more. No more.
That's a good shout, actually. In terms of, I didn't even think of her from a loan point of view.
She is a excellent footballer. I'm so glad that she's getting minutes at Brighton. I'm very, very, very excited about the future there. Hopefully, we don't mess it up.
No, indeed. Definitely one to keep an eye on, that's for sure.
Love it. I'm just going to stay here staring contest with the camera lens.
I was going to say, it's like that episode of Doctor Who all those years ago. For those of you who ever watched that Blink episode, that was years and years ago. For those of you who've ever watched that show. But yeah, that's one to keep an eye on. No, I wouldn't. And I love Cooney Cross, but no.
Not
different
ready.
kind of players, to be honest. And as I said, I see Gans as a centre-back anyway. And she played centre-back for Netherlands, so I'm keeping her at centre-back. So no, I wouldn't do that swap for that very reason.
Kyra also doesn't flourish in the six. I don't think she's an out-and-out defensive midfielder either. So I say no to that, Adam. I'm sorry.
Just very quickly before I come back to another question to Emma Watson. I mean, yeah, she's not played for Scotland since she had her injury. So I get that a little bit, but also, I mean, Caroline Weir, I can say this now, she's not a City. Absolutely love watching her for Scotland. She's unbelievable. But to be fair, the games against Hungary that Scotland played was a bit cagey anyway, so Emma was coming into a game, and I don't think any of the subs that Scotland really made too much of an impact, but I'm just glad to see her back playing, and hopefully we see her get some minutes in a United shirt. I'm looking at the Everton and the Newcastle County Cup games on that one. Right, there's a couple of questions here, particularly for you. This first one, does Jamie think Arsenal will make a bid for Grace? I know the answer. I hope you're going to say.
This was my summer plan. I told everyone I knew. I was like, here it is. She hates it at United. This is going to happen. She's going to hate it, and she's going to be so bad at United. And then she's going to sign for Arsenal next summer. Obviously, I didn't actually believe any of those things, but no, I don't think United will be making any effort to not give her exactly what she wants to keep her to stay. I think every team in the league, bar maybe City, should be making a bid for Grace Clinton. Not even Arsenal specific, but yeah, no, I don't really see her going anywhere. Yeah,
there'll definitely be clubs. To be honest, I don't know whether I said this on the last show or not. I'm pretty confident on Grace re-signing, and as TJ's put, there's an option on her contract anyway, so I'm not worried about her in that sense. So I do think we'll get some kind of contract in the next year or so with her. There's another question about the goalkeeper. How do you think she's done this season?
Yeah, this is a good question. In terms of the latter half of the question, I think Fallon tullis-joyce is so exceptional. It honestly pained me to watch her play so much on the bench last year because I think she's such a good keeper. She's the best number 2 keeper I've ever seen in the WSL. So she's been exceptional. And I think Daphne, I honestly, like, Daphne's one of those players where Arsenal probably should have been a bit more proactive about getting her last summer. I actually got the chance to chat to her last week, and she said it was really good for her to be able to go to Villa because it gave her an opportunity to learn the English style of football at maybe a less high stakes environment. So I think that was a very good decision for her career. I think she's an exceptional goalkeeper. She's so young. You often see with goalkeepers as well, they really flourish when they're in their late 20s, and she's still so young. So I'm so happy that we signed her. Like, I'm over the moon that we signed her, and I think she's pretty much established herself as the number one now. She, in that week where we had 3 games, it was Chelsea, West Ham, and Vålerenga in 7 days. She started all 3. So I'm pretty sure it's certain that she's gotten the cards over Zinsberger, or at least I would hope for the future.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be like a phasing out process maybe. And Manu will still get games, I think, but just maybe not as much as she was maybe used to. And I'm glad you brought up Fallon as well, because I think for those who didn't see, she didn't win Player of the Month actually for United. Grace Clinton did win it. And I think as much as I love Grace, and I think she deserved, to be fair, I said this at the time, all 4 of those on the list deserved it, but I do feel like Fallon or Celine would have been better choices, and I think this is the thing with fan voting. It's usually the most popular players that win these things, which is why Grace potentially won that one. Not taking away from anything she's done this month. I think, as I said, she was more than deserving, but I do think Fallon / Celine maybe would have been better shouts, because they're maybe not going to get as many months where they're in the 4 from a United point of view. But yeah, no, I agree with what you said on Van Darmstadt as well. I think she's a top keeper. There's a lot of people talking about transfers, and Kira Walsh's name's been mentioned. I can see all of that. That's one I'd keep an eye on. Certainly, I wouldn't be surprised actually keeping an eye on that in January, if I'm being totally honest, because I think there is something potentially that could be done there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I would keep eyes on the Kira Walsh thing. I think if Arsenal were willing to throw the kitchen sink in the summer, then there may be more to come there.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's. Yeah, it's interesting. Transfers always interest me in terms of the back room, in terms of what goes on and everything else, which is some secretive, some not on that front. Speaking of, there was Highland, your question ages ago in terms of why is it so vague on player situation. It's to not. I don't know this is. Please don't take this as fact. This is my assumption, with a little bit of conversations that I've had thrown in. I for the most part, you don't want to give the opposition too much. So you don't want to let the opposition know that, oh, so-and-so is out for this long, because then that opposition can then plan for it. If you give a vague-ish kind of answer and say that they might be out or they might be available, the opposition then don't know if they're going to be ready or not. So that's the main reason for doing it. Hence, before the Spurs game, there was no mention of Jade or Jace being missing until we tweeted about it just before the lineup came out there, because of that very reason. So I think there is a potential around that. And sometimes it's waiting for scans and stuff like that to come back. Sometimes they genuinely don't know how long a player is going to be out for. So there is two reasons, but the first one is usually the most used, I guess, reasons to why that is. One of my kind of final questions on it, because we asked this kind of on the tweet, and also we spoke a bit about backstage. Do you think this is a must-win game for Arsenal, but also for both teams? Do you think either team will be happy with a draw in this one? Do you think it's must-win for both? What are your kind of thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think both teams. I don't think either team should be banking on a draw, but I do think the severity levels are very different. Arsenal lose on the weekend, and it's probably, I don't want to say it's a given because I really respect Crystal Palace and I think Laura Kaminsky's doing something fun there, but it's probably a given that City are going to get the edge over Crystal Palace. If Arsenal lose against United, they're 8 points adrift. So that's the league. If the league wasn't already done, which it probably was, that's the league done, but that puts them in a very precarious situation for third place. And I think when you've drawn to Everton and United have beaten Everton, and then if maybe United get the edge over you on the weekend, then it puts Champions League in a very, very harsh and precarious situation. And it also is a reminder that they also need to play Chelsea and City away. Already had those home games and haven't won either of them. So there's some big games that aren't on home turf going forward. So for me, Arsenal losing this game is extremely detrimental. I don't think United will go in saying, guys, let's get a draw. It's fine. It's because I think they've got the quality to be able to beat Arsenal. I think either team on their day can comfortably beat either team on their day. So I think United maybe will have a little bit more leeway with that draw, given the fact that they've gotten the edge over teams already that Arsenal haven't been able to. So that's a bit of breathing room for them. But this top three race is going to be where it is at this season, because those top two, I think, are going to really, really flex their muscles. But if United win against Arsenal this week, who is putting them out of the title race? Who is actually discounting them from the title race right now? Because there is no reason why they should be discounted from the title race. Yes, we're looking at points and it's obvious they're up there. Yes, like they're in the title race, but I don't think anyone's really thinking of them as an option. And I just want to remind everyone of the 2022-23 season, because it was ruthless. Like, United were a ruthless outfit. It's been one very poor year and suddenly they're never an option again. So I think it's a must win for Arsenal, and United have a bit more breathing room than they might expect.
And I will just add, in that very poor year, we won our first ever major trophy in the FA Cup and beat Chelsea for the first time. So this is a thing, right? And I think, but I
don't the league.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I was just adding a bit of context as well. But I will also add, I don't think we are going to win the league, just before people start calling me deluded and everything else. But I think you're right in terms of the conversation. I do think it's must win for Arsenal. I've got to be honest. I think when you're looking at the table and the games that Arsenal already played, if they lose again, I think that's probably more detrimental than it is to United. Now, don't get me wrong. I think, as Teresa said there, we are, United being the home team. I always look at the games like this, that you win your home and try and get a point away, is how I've always kind of looked at it. And if you can win away, amazing. But first and foremost, you win your home games against these teams. I think, as has been referenced in the chat as well, that United have actually only lost one of the last 4 home games against Arsenal. I can't remember when that was. It was Marskin's first season. It was 2-0. Miedemar scored in that game, actually, from memory. So a couple of years ago now. Obviously, last season's 2-2 draw right in the dying moments of that game, so United were close to win that. So usually United at home are decent enough against Arsenal. And I've got to be honest, Jamie, cover your ears. Arsenal are probably the team I always fear the least in any season, not just this season, just across the seasons. We usually do okay against Arsenal. It's City and Chelsea that have been the problem over the years. So I don't think it's must win for United. I think it's more of a need to win. I think if United come away with a draw, I don't think it's, oh my life, the season's over. I think it's more of just like a disappointment than that, really.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But what's someone saying? I don't think they're out of it already. If they lose on Sunday, they will be.
pretty comfortably. When you think about the fact that we lost the league by 5 points and we're already 5 points off, I don't see City and Chelsea dropping points against lower teams like Everton either. So I am a pessimistic football fan though. So I'm not gonna say that we're out of it, but I don't think we've got a great shot.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I know what you're saying. There's a guy in the comments talking about, the players that United used to have. But I feel like United have replaced those. Talk about having Russo and Honor and so on. I don't get me wrong. I don't think anyone could replace Honor. I still stand by. She's one of the best fullbacks around. But you've got the likes of Jay coming through as well, who I think has come on leaps and bounds. You look at Russo, for example. You've got Elizabeth Turland, who was one of the second top scorer, or joint second top scorer in the WSL last season. And then you've also got Grace Clinton coming through at the moment, which most clubs are looking at as one of the best in the league right now in terms of form. So I don't think United are that far off. I said this on the previous shows. You never know with the league. As I said, that season, the 22-23 season, no one thought United were going to go on and win as many games as they did. Even me. We went on a winning run, then we lost to Chelsea, and it was like, okay, back down to reality. And then we won pretty much every game until we played Chelsea again. So, things can happen in the season. I've always said this, as long as you just keep adding 3 points onto the board, that's more valuable than potential performances throughout the season. Yep. Albeit, I would like to see those improved as well.
I think on paper as well, United, other than Onabatya, who you've just mentioned there, on paper, I think the squad list right now is probably more talented. On paper, I'm not saying in terms of cohesive performances, as it was in that 2022 season. So there's nothing writing it off except for how they play on the field.
I think the only difference between this, and again, it's still early, United are a game behind as well at the moment. But I think, I believe I'm right in saying United actually haven't scored a goal yet past the 65th minute. So in the last 25 minutes of a game, and that's including the League Cup game against Liverpool, because I think that was in the 63rd or something like that. United haven't scored a goal past that time frame yet. So that would be my only worry, that if we need, it's going to happen at some point. We're not going to go the whole season without scoring in the last 25. But that 22-23 season, we scored a lot of late goals that kind of got us over the line. So, of course, CJ, we're going up in the world now. I've got to get my facts right. Make sure I'm prepared for these things. But yeah, so that would be my only slight concern, a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I'm intrigued. We'll round off with score predictions in just a second. I just want to read some of these comments while we're going back through. Yes, nothing ever top that season. I don't think, until we actually win the league. I don't think anything's going to top how good that season was. Yeah, TJ kind of backing up what you were just saying as well about the points dropped at home.
Yeah.
Already with a few difficult away games as well. Ema, come on. Someone's beating Chelsea this season. Chelsea are not going invincible.
Yeah. I don't think Chelsea have been convincing either. I think other than that Chelsea game, other than the game at Selhurst Park and maybe the Spurs game because they battered them in the second half, I think Chelsea have been very on the back foot. That Arsenal game, I thought they were in the back foot, uninspiring. The Villa game, I don't think they were that exciting. I think there'll be a team that really is able to capitalize on Chelsea right now because sometimes they do look a bit tired and lackluster. I think City are dangerous. In my eyes, City are a much scarier opposition than Chelsea are right now. It's just maybe Chelsea have the edge on squad depth because their bench is absolutely bonkers. It shouldn't be allowed.
With Sam Kerr to come back into that team.
Oh my God. Me official. Cat the car. It's ridiculous.
I've said from the start of the season, I think it'll be a 2-horse race at the top again with Chelsea and City. I think you'll see the top four break into two each. Sorry, you'll see Chelsea and City, and then you'll see United and Arsenal. It'll kind of just be split with like a 6-7 point gap between third and second, and that'll be the battle. And that's why it's a big game for the top three, because I think if United have got ambitions, which I know they have, in terms of getting back into the top three again, which, by the way, is incredibly hard to do. As I mentioned before, the top three's only been different once in 10 years, and that was when we got into it a couple of years ago. So it takes a lot to break that top three from Chelsea, Arsenal, City. So if United can get back in there again, which obviously is the aim this season, this game is a must-win from that point of view, because I just feel like you need to beat the teams that are fighting for that spot. It's all well and good beating everyone else, which you need to do, but if you can, because it's a 6-pointer essentially, you're picking up 3 points and you're denying another team from getting 3, so it's almost like a 6-point swing. So I think that's massively important as well. So it's interesting to keep an eye on Sunday, that's for sure. So we'll round off with score predictions then, in terms of, this is always the fun part of the show, the last bit where everyone goes crazy with their predictions. But it's always cliche, I find, in these games. Everyone goes 2-1 all the time. Whenever you ask these questions, it's always 2-1 either way. Are you going to go with that? Are you going to go with a 2-1, or are you going to go for something a little bit different?
I'm going to go 3-3. Sorry to be 3-3. Wow. I'm going to go goal scoring fest. I think United will come out strong, and then I think Arsenal will come back, and it'll be one of those situations where it's like too late equalizers, and then maybe 10 minutes of both sides trying to go for a winner. I'm thinking it's going to be a party at Lee Sports Village on Sunday. That's my prophecy.
I was not expecting that. I mean, there's some 2-2, yeah, obviously same as last season. Of course, you got 2-1. There's a 3-2. No.
Oh, look, I don't know.
that would be insane. I mean, I'm not against it by all means, but I can't see that.
Anything can happen at this stage.
Erling's gone for goal scorers as well. Man in front, yeah, I think that's fair. 3-1, you have put that. It is built up to that, isn't it? Like, you know, I always say that with some of these big games, there's so much hype leading towards it, and then you just get a 0-0. So I hope not.
Surprise me, actually. That's a good shout. That is a good shout.
2-2 again. Yeah, 3-1, 2. What? No.
I like you.
Oh, I like that as well.
That's an Arsenal fan saying that.
I like that.
Wow. So much faith.
Sophie's gone for a 1-0 as well. So, yeah, I think I agree with Ema. I'm going to go for a 3-1 as well to United, obviously. Because I do think we'll concede at some point. But I just think United's fine. But Arsenal defensively haven't convinced me enough to think that they're going to keep a few out. And I think United will get a couple of early goals. Arsenal might get one back into it, and then United score later on in the game is kind of how I see it. Obviously, it could be completely wrong, so holding with predictions, but there we go. I do tend to agree with that a little bit. I think defensively, again, I think there's going to be goals in this, that's for sure. So your 3-3 prediction might not be too far off, to be
imagine.
So, I do think we'll see some goals, that's for sure. Yes, I was a criminal score prediction. I can't believe I brought that up. I think he said he's a Chelsea fan, so kind of explains that a little bit. But you go for an Arsenal win when you're a Chelsea fan.
Interesting. I'll take it.
I don't know about that. I made it back to South up here. I think 2-0 up at half time. Oh, wow.
I love the detail on it. I have so much respect for that.
I was going to say, everyone's going for like full on. If the thing is, if these things happen, you're going to get like accused of match fixing or something. Like in the comments, you got some insider thing into what's going on.
Stop it, guys! Stop it.
I don't know what's going on here. My last kind of question. Well, it's not even a question. It's to me really. Is Jayce expected to play? She's back. She'll be in the squad. Unless she's got injured in the last like 48 hours, but she should be in the squad. Whether she starts or not, I think that really depends on whether Bizet's at right back or not. I don't think she starts. No, I think she plays. I think she comes on. Obviously, Melvin's back as well now, so you've got Mallard back in the mix. Yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be tough for her to start. I think with Bizet's form and Grace Clinton and so on. Have I back? Right, first I know what you're referring to. Let's not call it the North Bank, because that's an Arsenal thing. But I am in the North Stand, yes, and I will be back in my corner that I'm always in. For those of you who watch any videos that we put out on TikTok or Twitter or whatever else, you can see where I am. It's usually in that corner. We've claimed that as the All for United corner. So no one's allowed that standing spot near the railings. There we go. Right, we'll look to wrap it up there. It's gone slightly longer than I thought it was going to in terms of a preview. Jamie, where can people find your work? Because you're doing all kinds of things these days. I know you're doing the podcast with Tim, you're writing as well for 90 Minute. Where can people find all of those various different kind of things you're up to these days?
Yeah, you can find all of my work on my Twitter at Jamie Spangher. I'm writing for 90 Min and then also my own outlet, women's football outlet, The Halfway Line. So yeah, just everything's on Twitter. Go have a look.
Yes, make sure you do. And The Halfway Line, by the way, for those of you who would have seen, obviously, the Content Awards, which is in 3.5 weeks' time. Which you're going, aren't you, Jamie?
I am.
There we go. Yes, indeed. So you'll see us all kind of suited up in about 3.5 weeks' time for that one. As obviously we're there, and the Halfway Line, which is Jamie's thing as well, is also there. So
I'm excited. I can't take the allegations anymore. I can't do it anymore. That's the first time. Thank you, though. Very kind.
I was going to say it's been another good show. That's for sure. And
thanks, JJ.
So it's been great to have you on. Great to have everyone in the comments as well. As I said, obviously Sunday will be match day content as always. For those of you follow the Twitter and the Instagram and everything else, so make sure you're doing all that if you haven't already, which is All for United WFC. Like in this video and subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back on Monday at 7:00 where we're discussing the game in more detail. And yeah, fingers crossed. It's just a good game because we love that, don't we? To keep an eye on as well. But obviously, from a United point of view, I hope we get the win. Thanks all for your comments and everything. That's been absolutely brilliant. Thanks to Jamie for hopping on. We shall see you guys in the next one.